where you went when the kingdom wanted you erased. And as Nerissa stood alone on the blood-soaked sand, chains heavy on her wrists, she understood one truth with perfect clarity. No one survived the beast. The Lycan had torn apart warriors, criminals, and traitors for a decade. It knew nothing but hunger and rage. The crowd had gathered not to witness a fight, but to watch a slaughter. Nerissa had stopped praying 3 days ago. The gods didn't listen to wolfless girls. The iron gate groaned open, and darkness shifted within. She heard it first, the scrape of massive claws against stone, the low rumble of breath that hadn't known satisfaction in weeks. They starved it before executions, made it savage, made it quick. When the creature emerged, the crowd fell silent. It was enormous. Black fur matted with old blood, eyes like molten gold, muscles coiled beneath scarred hide, a monster forged from nightmare and kept alive only to kill. It stalked toward her, each step shaking the ground. Nerissa's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't obey. So she stood, trembling, as death approached. The Lycan stopped 3 feet away, close enough for her to see the intelligence buried beneath the madness, the flicker of something almost confused. Then the beast did something it had never done in 10 years of executions. It lowered its massive head and bowed. Neither of them understood what her presence had awakened, but the woman who ordered this execution did. And she was already planning how to bury this moment forever. 3 days earlier, Nerissa had still believed she might survive this life. She'd been wrong. The Vance estate was never home. It was a cage dressed in silk curtains and cold marble floors, where Nerissa had scrubbed and served since she was old enough to hold a broom. Lady Orinth had taken her in as an infant, not from kindness, but from obligation. A dying noblewoman had begged her, apparently. Some distant connection no one spoke of. Nerissa never learned who her parents were. Only that they were dead, that she was wolfless, and that both facts made her worthless. In Valdrin, the wolf was everything. Every citizen of noble or common blood could shift by their 16th year. It marked them as true children of the kingdom, blessed by the moon herself. Those who couldn't shift were considered cursed, broken, barely above animals. Nerissa was 23 and had never felt as much as a whisper of a wolf inside her. Wolfless wretch, Sabine called her daily. Lady Orinth's daughter was beautiful, cruel, and engaged to a minor lord who enjoyed her sharp tongue. She also enjoyed using Nerissa as her personal servant, making her kneel to lace her boots, standing on her fingers when she wasn't fast enough. That morning, Sabine had been in a particularly vicious mood. "Mother says the prince is visiting the southern estates next month," Sabine announced, examining herself in the mirror while Nerissa brushed her hair. "Perhaps I'll catch his eye. Wouldn't that be something? Me? A princess?" "Prince Malachar prefers blondes, my lady," Nerissa said quietly. It wasn't defiance, just fact. Everyone knew the prince's tastes. The brush was snatched from her hand and cracked across her cheek. "You dare?" Sabine hissed. "You forget your place, wolfless." Nerissa touched her stinging face but said nothing. She'd learned long ago that silence hurt less than resistance, but silence wouldn't save her from what came next. That evening, Lady Orinth's prized ruby necklace vanished from her chambers. The entire household was searched, and when the necklace was discovered beneath Nerissa's thin mattress, placed there, she knew, by Sabine's own hands, no one listened to her protests. "Thief!" Lady Orinth pronounced, her eyes cold with something that looked almost like relief. "After everything I've done for you, the crown will hear of this." The crown did hear, and the crown's punishment for theft from nobility was death, not just any death. The arena. The cells beneath the Colosseum smelled of old blood and despair. Nerissa had been stripped of everything except a thin shift, her wrists bound in iron. Around her, other prisoners wept or prayed or stared at nothing. Most were hardened criminals, murderers, traitors, men who had defied Queen Severa's rule. She was the only woman. The only one condemned for a stolen necklace. First time, girl? A grizzled man in the next cell studied her through the bars. Half his face was scarred, one eye milky white. You won't feel much. Beast's quick when it's hungry. What is it? Nerissa whispered. The beast? The man laughed bitterly. Lycan, the last one in Valdrin, as far as anyone knows. They've kept it caged for years. Starve it, then loose it on whoever the queen wants dead. He leaned closer. Used to be more of them, back when the silver moon still ruled. But that was before. Before what? His expression shuddered. Before the purge. Before Severa took everything. He turned away. Best not to speak of it. The walls have ears and the queen has a long memory. Nerissa didn't understand his words, but she felt their weight. Something old and terrible had happened in Valdrin. Something no one dared discuss. Not that it mattered now. In a few hours, she would be dead. The guards came at dawn. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Nerissa stumbled onto the sand, blinded by sudden sunlight after days in darkness. The arena was massive. A circular pit surrounded by towering stone walls, packed with thousands of spectators. Nobles occupied the shaded upper boxes while common folk crammed the lower tiers, jeering and throwing rotten fruit. At the highest point, draped in black velvet and gold, sat Queen Severa. She was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, sharp, cold, designed to cut. Silver hair coiled atop her head like a crown of snakes. Her eyes, pale as winter ice, found Nerissa across the distance and held. Nerissa felt pinned by that gaze, judged, dismissed. Beside the queen sat her son, Prince Malachar. Where his mother was ice, he was fire, dark-haired, flushed with cruel excitement, already leaning forward in anticipation of blood. Citizens of Valdrin, the announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Today, we cleanse our kingdom of another criminal who has violated sacred law. Let the beast deliver the moon's justice. The crowd roared approval. The iron gate began to rise. Nerissa's knees buckled. She caught herself, forced herself to stand straight. If she was going to die, she would die on her feet. She would not give Sabine or Lady Orinth or any of them the satisfaction of seeing her crawl. Darkness shifted behind the gate. Then it emerged. Nerissa had expected a wolf. A large one, perhaps savage, perhaps terrifying, but still recognizable. This was something else entirely. The Lycan stood nearly 8 feet tall, a monstrous fusion of man and beast. Its body was wolf-like but wrong, too large, too powerful, walking on hind legs that ended in claws capable of gutting a man in a single swipe. Black fur covered rippling muscle, matted with old blood and filth. Its muzzle was elongated, filled with teeth like daggers, but it was the eyes that stopped Nerissa's breath. Golden, burning, and somewhere in their depths, buried beneath years of starvation and torment, something that looked almost human. The beast's nostrils flared, it scented her, then it charged. The crowd screamed in delight. Nerissa couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She watched death come for her in the form of claws and fury, and some strange peace settled over her. At least it would be quick. The Lycan was 3 strides away. 2. Then it stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. The beast stood inches from her, close enough that she could smell the musk of its fur, feel the heat radiating from its body. Its massive head tilted, studying her with those burning eyes. Its nostrils flared again, drawing in her scent deeply. A rumble built in its chest. Not aggression. Something else. Slowly, impossibly, the Lycan lowered its front legs. It bowed its head until its muzzle nearly touched the sand, and stayed there. Nerissa stared down at the creature, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. Above her, the crowd had gone utterly silent. In the royal box, Queen Severa had risen to her feet, her face white as bone. "What is this?" someone whispered. No one had an answer. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then chaos erupted. Guards poured onto the sand, spears leveled at the still kneeling beast. The crowd's stunned silence fractured into confused shouting. In the royal box, advisors clustered around Queen Severa, speaking rapidly in hushed tones. Nerissa stood frozen, afraid to move, afraid that any motion would break whatever spell had descended. The Lycan remained bowed at her feet, its massive body trembling, not with rage, but with something else. Exhaustion, perhaps, or recognition. "What have you done?" The guard captain's voice cracked as he approached, his spear aimed at Nerissa's chest rather than the beast's. "What witchcraft is this? I don't know." "Enough." The single word cut through the noise like a blade. Queen Severa had descended from her box, flanked by her personal guard. The crowd fell silent as she approached, her black gown trailing across the blood-stained sand. She stopped 10 feet away, her ice-pale eyes moving from Nerissa to the kneeling Lycan and back again. Something flickered in her expression. Fear, quickly masked. Then calculation. "The moon has spoken," the queen announced, her voice carrying across the arena. "This woman was sent to face divine judgment, and divine judgment has found her worthy." The crowd murmured in confusion. "Surely, Your Majesty," an advisor interjected, "this must be some trick." "Are you calling the moon's will a trick?" Severa's tone could have frozen fire. The advisor paled and retreated. The queen turned back to address her people, spreading her arms in a gesture of magnanimity. "We must accept this sign. The beast has chosen to spare her. Who are we to contradict such clear divine favor?" Nerissa didn't understand what was happening. She only knew that she wasn't dead, and that the queen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "The girl will be brought to the palace," Severa continued. "She will serve as caretaker for the beast, since it seems so fond of her." Scattered, uncertain applause rippled through the crowd. "Let no one say the crown ignores the will of the gods." The pronouncement had the feel of performance, and Nerissa knew, with cold certainty, that this mercy was anything but. The palace was a monument to conquest. Nerissa had never been inside. Few common folk ever crossed its threshold, and certainly no wolfless servant girl had walked these corridors. Yet here she was, flanked by guards who treated her like something between a prisoner and a plague carrier, being marched through halls adorned with tapestries depicting the glory of Queen Severa's house. She noticed what wasn't depicted. No images of the silver moon. No trace of whoever had ruled before. They stopped before a heavy oak door reinforced with iron bands. "Your new quarters," the guard captain said with a sneer. "Adjacent to the beast's cage, since you're such good friends." Before Nerissa could respond, the door was opened and she was shoved inside. The chamber was small, but clean. A narrow bed, a wash basin, a single window set high in the wall. Through a barred opening in the far wall, she could see into a larger space, a cell built to contain something massive and dangerous. The Lycan lay in the center, still in that monstrous form. Chains thick as her arm connected its limbs to anchors in the stone floor. Its eyes, those burning golden eyes, tracked her the moment she appeared. It didn't growl, didn't threaten, just watched. "You'll feed it, clean its wounds, whatever it needs." The guard captain tossed a bundle of cloth at her feet. "Servant's clothes. The queen wants it kept alive for now. Consider this your sacred duty." His mockery made the last words drip with contempt. The door slammed. The lock clicked. Nerissa stood alone with the monster that should have killed her. For 3 days, she followed a careful routine. Twice daily, servants delivered food, raw meat for the beast, thin gruel for her. Nerissa would slide the meat through a slot in the bars, watching as the Lycan devoured it with savage efficiency. The chains prevented it from reaching her, but she kept her distance anyway. On the 4th day, something changed. The meat delivery came as usual, but when Nerissa lifted the bowl, she noticed the portions had decreased. Again. The Lycan was being systematically starved, just as it had been before executions. They're preparing it, she realized with a chill, preparing it to be savage again. For someone else. Or for her. Once the queen decided divine favor had expired. She watched the beast tear through its meager meal in seconds, then pace restlessly within its chains, clearly still hungry. Its movements were slower than before, weakened. Each day it ate less. It would lose more strength, more control. Nerissa looked at her own bowl of gruel, barely enough to sustain a child, but she'd survived on worse at the Vance estate. Before she could think better of it, she approached the bars. The Lycan went still, watching her. She set the gruel bowl on the ground, then slid it through the gap at the bottom of the bars. "It's not much," she said quietly, "but it's something." The beast stared at the bowl, then at her, then back at the bowl. Slowly, as if afraid the offering might be a trap, it lowered its massive head and lapped at the gruel. When the bowl was empty, it looked up at her again, and did something impossible. It bowed its head. Briefly, just a dip, but unmistakable. Gratitude. From a monster. "You're not what they say, are you?" Nerissa whispered. "You're something else." The Lycan held her gaze, and deep in those golden eyes she glimpsed something that made her breath catch. Sorrow. A week passed in near silence. Nerissa shared her meals. The Lycan accepted them. Neither spoke. He couldn't, trapped in that monstrous form, but a fragile understanding grew between them. She would sit by the bars and talk, filling the silence with words she'd never dared speak aloud before. She told him about the Vance estate, about Lady Orinth's cruelty and Sabini's venom, about years of being called worthless, broken, less than nothing. She told him about the necklace she hadn't stolen, the trial that wasn't a trial, the death that wasn't death. "I don't know why you spared me," she admitted one evening, her back against the cold bars, face tilted toward the high window where moonlight filtered through. "But I'm grateful, even if we're both still caged." A low sound came from behind her. Not a growl, softer, almost questioning. Nerissa turned to find the Lycan lying as close to the bars as his chains allowed. His massive head rested on his forelegs, eyes fixed on her with an intensity that felt almost human. "You understand me, don't you?" she breathed. The beast blinked slowly, deliberately. "Yes." Her pulse spiked. "Who are you? What happened to you?" Pain flickered in those golden depths. The Lycan turned its head away, and Nerissa felt the weight of a grief so old and deep it seemed to fill the cell. She didn't push further. Instead, she did something reckless. She reached toward him. The beast went rigid, its muscles coiled, claws scraping against stone. Every instinct screamed at her to pull back, but Nerissa held steady, her fingers hovering inches from matted black fur. "I won't hurt you," she said softly. "I think you've been hurt enough." For an endless moment, nothing moved. Then the Lycan shifted closer, slowly, carefully, until her fingertips brushed against its muzzle. The fur was coarse but warm, the skin beneath burning with unnatural heat. A tremor ran through the beast's body at her touch, a full-body shudder that seemed equal parts relief and agony. Nerissa stroked gently, fingers tracing scars she could feel but not see. How many years had this creature suffered? How long since anyone had touched it with kindness rather than chains? The Lycan's eyes drifted closed. A sound escaped its throat, not a growl, not a whimper, but something devastatingly close to a sigh. "I don't know what they did to you," Nerissa whispered, "but you're not a monster. You never were." She fell asleep there, back against the bars, hand still resting against his fur. When morning came, she woke to warmth at her back. The Lycan had pressed its massive body against the bars, curved around her as much as chains would allow, protecting her, even in sleep. Or perhaps seeking protection. Nerissa should have felt terrified. Instead, she felt something far more dangerous. Safe. That afternoon, the Queen came. Nerissa scrambled to her feet as the door opened, revealing Sevra in crimson silk, flanked by guards and advisors. The queen's cold eyes swept over the scene, the shared space, the empty bowls, the Lycan pressed close to the bars near where Nerissa stood. Fascinating, Severa murmured. It really has taken to you. Your Majesty. Nerissa dropped into an awkward curtsy, heart racing. I've done only what was ordered. Yes, yes. The queen waved dismissively. I didn't come for reports on feeding schedules. She stepped closer, studying Nerissa with an intensity that felt like being dissected. I came to understand why my beast, my perfectly obedient executioner, threw away a decade of conditioning the moment you appeared. I don't know, Your Majesty. I swear I don't. What house are you from? The question caught her off guard. No house, Your Majesty. I was a ward of the Vance family, an orphan. An orphan? Sevra's lips curved, but her eyes remained frozen. No family at all? No lineage? None that I know of. The queen circled her slowly, and Nerissa felt the weight of that examination like physical pressure. You're wolfless, I'm told. Never shifted. Is that correct? Shame burned in Nerissa's cheeks. Yes, Your Majesty. Strange. Sevra stopped before her, tilting her head. A wolfless girl who tames the most savage creature in my kingdom. Either you're lying about what you are, or something else is at play. Behind them, the Lycan had risen to its feet. A low growl rumbled from its chest, not directed at Nerissa, but at the queen. Sevra's composure flickered. Just for a moment, something like fear crossed her face before she masked it. You'll continue your duties, the queen declared, already turning to leave. And you'll tell no one of the beast's behavior, understood? Yes, Your Majesty. Good. Sevra paused at the door, glancing back with a smile that chilled Nerissa to the bone. I have plans for you both. Enjoy your time together while it lasts. The door closed. Nerissa released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Behind her, the Lycan's growl faded. She felt its presence at the bars again, radiating heat and something that felt almost like concern. She's afraid of you, Nerissa realized aloud. No. She's afraid of what you mean. The beast made that questioning sound again. Nerissa turned to face him, pressing her palm flat against the bars. He mirrored the gesture, one massive paw rising to meet her hand. The size difference was absurd. Her hand was smaller than a single pad of his paw, but the gentleness of his touch was unmistakable. What are you? She whispered. And why does looking at you feel like coming home? No answer. Just those golden eyes, burning with secrets he couldn't speak. But somewhere in her chest, in a place that had been hollow her entire life, Nerissa felt something stir. Something that had been sleeping for a very, very long time. 2 weeks had passed since the arena. 2 weeks of shared meals and whispered confessions. Nerissa had stopped fearing the beast. She'd started calling him Ashvine, because speaking to something nameless felt wrong, and he seemed to respond with a slight lift of the head, a softening in those watchful eyes. She spent her days tending to his wounds, old scars and fresh ones, evidence of the chains that bit into his flesh whenever he moved too suddenly. She demanded salves from the servants, claiming the queen wanted her executioner healthy. They obeyed, though their eyes held suspicion. At night, she slept against the bars, and he curled as close as chains allowed. It was madness. She knew it was madness, but for the first time in her life, Nerissa didn't feel alone. I used to dream about running away, she told him one evening, working salve into a gash on his shoulder. The bars limited her reach, but he'd learned to position himself so she could tend the worst of it. Somewhere far from Valdrin, where no one cared about wolves or bloodlines. Somewhere I could just exist. Ashvane made a low sound, almost mournful. Do you dream? She asked softly. Can you dream, trapped in that form? He closed his eyes, and she saw pain ripple across his features, not physical, but something deeper. the kind of pain that lived in the soul. I'm sorry. She stroked the fur along his muzzle, gentler now than she'd ever touched anything. Whatever happened to you, I'm sorry. When his eyes opened again, they held something new: determination. The Lycan pulled back from her touch, and Nerissa's heart dropped. Had she pushed too far? Said something wrong? But he wasn't retreating. He was concentrating. A tremor ran through his massive body, his muscles seized, spine arching at an unnatural angle. A sound tore from his throat, half howl, half scream, and Nerissa scrambled backward in alarm. What's happening? What? Light exploded from his form, blinding silver that burned her eyes and forced her to look away. The chains rattled violently, the cell filled with the scent of ozone, like lightning had struck inches away. Then silence. Nerissa lowered her arm, blinking spots from her vision. Where the beast had crouched, a man now knelt. He was naked, trembling, drenched in sweat. Dark hair hung across his face in matted tangles, and his body bore the same scars she'd felt beneath the fur, a roadmap of suffering etched into human skin. He was thin, far too thin, muscle wasted from years of starvation, but when he lifted his head, she recognized those eyes, golden, burning, and now, finally, capable of speech. Nerissa. Her name in his voice was ragged, broken from disuse, but unmistakably human. My name is Corvain. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The monster who had spared her life, the beast she'd tended and confessed to and touched. He was a man, had always been a man. How? She whispered. The curse. He coughed, his body shaking with the effort of maintaining human form. It keeps me trapped. I can only shift when the moon is right, when my will is strong enough. His eyes found hers, burning with intensity. You gave me something I'd lost. Reason to try. Nerissa moved toward the bars without thinking, dropping to her knees to be level with him. Up close, she could see the toll the transformation had taken, blood trickling from his nose, veins standing out against too pale skin. You're hurting yourself. It's worth it. He dragged himself closer until only the bars separated them. His hand, human now, long-fingered and scarred, reached through to cup her face. His touch was gentle, reverent, trembling with restraint. I needed you to see me, he breathed. The real me. Before what? Grief flooded his features. Before the curse takes what's left. Over the following nights, Corvain shifted whenever he could muster the strength. Each transformation cost him blood, pain, precious hours of lucidity. But he was desperate to speak, to explain, to know her as a man rather than a monster. They talked like prisoners sharing a wall, iron between them, voices low to avoid the guards. He told her of Valdrin before the purge, of a time when the silver moon ruled with wisdom and compassion, when Lycans were honored protectors rather than chained executioners. His family, the Valdris bloodline, had guided the kingdom for generations. I was the youngest prince, he said, his voice hollow with memory, third in line, never expected to rule. But my brothers were idealists. They trusted too easily. What happened? Severa happened. His jaw tightened. She was a minor noble, beautiful and ambitious. She seduced my eldest brother, married into our house. We thought she loved him. He laughed bitterly. She loved only power. When she'd learned enough of our secrets, our weaknesses, she struck. The purge, Nerissa realized. The event no one spoke of. She murdered my father and brothers in a single night. Used dark magic, blood sorcery bought from the shadow markets, to curse our bloodline. Any Valdris who survived would be trapped in beast form, unable to shift, unable to speak, unable to rally the people against her. But you survived? Barely. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining through the iron. She kept me alive deliberately, a symbol of her triumph, the last prince of the silver moon, reduced to her personal executioner. For 10 years, I've killed at her command. Unable to refuse. Unable to stop myself when the hunger becomes too great. Nerissa's heart shattered for him. 10 years of being used as a weapon against his own people. 10 years of watching himself commit atrocities while trapped in a body that wasn't his own. The people I killed, he continued, voice cracking. They weren't all criminals. Some were loyalists, resistors, people who remembered the old ways and dared to speak of them. Tears tracked down his gaunt cheeks. She fed me her enemies and called it justice. That wasn't you, Nerissa said fiercely. That was her using you. It was my teeth, my claws, their blood on my... No. She gripped his hand tighter. You were a prisoner, a victim. You can't blame yourself for what she forced you to do. He stared at her as if she'd spoken a foreign language, as if no one had ever absolved him before. How? He whispered. How can you look at what I am, what I've done, and not see a monster? Because I see you, Nerissa said simply. The real you. And monsters don't bow to servant girls in arenas. Monsters don't share their pain in the dark. Monsters don't look at someone the way you're looking at me right now. Corvain's breath caught. His hand rose to her face again, thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. When you stepped onto that sand, he said slowly, something in me woke up. Something I thought Severa had killed. I couldn't explain it then. I still can't fully explain it now, but my wolf recognized you, not as prey, not as victim. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. As mate. The word hung between them, impossible and undeniable. That's insane, Nerissa breathed. I'm wolfless. I'm nobody. You're everything. He pressed his forehead against the bars, as close to her as iron would allow. I know how it sounds. I know you have no reason to believe me. But my wolf has never been wrong, and it chose you, Nerissa. Before I even knew your name, it chose you. She should have pulled away, should have reminded him that she was a disgraced servant and he was a cursed prince, that they were both prisoners of a queen who would destroy them the moment she discovered this connection. Instead, she leaned forward, pressing her lips to his despite the iron between them. The kiss was awkward, constrained, flavored with desperation and salt from tears neither acknowledged. But it was also the most honest moment of Nerissa's life, two broken people finding wholeness in each other. When they finally parted, Corvain was smiling. It transformed his face, chasing away the shadows, revealing the man he might have been in another life. I love you, he said, and the words seemed to surprise him as much as her. Gods help me. I love you. I don't know how it happened or when, but He stopped mid-sentence, his face contorted in sudden agony, a strangled cry escaping his throat. His hand spasmed in hers, then ripped away as his spine arched violently backward. Corvain! Nerissa grabbed for him, but he was already convulsing, his body twisting in ways that should have broken bone. Silver light flickered across his skin, but wrong, tainted with threads of black that spread like poison. No, he gasped. Not yet, I didn't. The curse. The darkness swallowed him. When it cleared, the beast had returned. But this time, something was different. The Lycan collapsed onto the stone floor, sides heaving, golden eyes flickering with unnatural shadow. And where his heart should have beaten strong and steady, Nerissa could see darkness spreading beneath his fur, a web of black veins pulsing outward with each labored breath. What's happening? She screamed, pressing herself against the bars. Corvain, answer me! But the beast couldn't speak, could only look at her with eyes full of terror as the curse consumed him from within. You're dying. The words echoed in the cell like a death sentence, which, Nerissa supposed, they were. Corvain had managed to shift again, but it had taken 3 days, and his human form was weaker than before. He sat slumped against the bars, breathing shallow, dark veins visible beneath his skin like cracks in porcelain. The curse has stages, he explained, voice barely above a whisper. First, it traps you in beast form. Then, it feeds on your humanity. Every time you feel something beyond rage and hunger, it takes a piece of you. His eyes met hers, heavy with grief. Strong emotions accelerate it. And love is the most dangerous of all. Understanding crashed over Nerissa like a wave of ice. That's why you were safe for 10 years, she breathed. You didn't feel anything. Couldn't feel anything. The curse kept you numb. And then you appeared. A ghost of a smile crossed his ravaged face. You made me feel again. You woke something I thought was dead. The smile faded. And now that awakening is killing me. No. Nerissa shook her head violently. There has to be a way to break it. Every curse has a counter. Every spell has a weakness. Severa made sure there wasn't. She used old magic, blood magic. The only way to break it would be... He stopped, looking away. Would be what? Silence. Corvain, tell me. The blood of a Valdris heir, he said finally. Freely given under the light of the full moon. But I'm the last one. There are no other heirs. She made certain of that. Nerissa's mind raced. There had to be something. Some loophole, some forgotten relative, some way to save him. She couldn't have found him only to watch him die. Maybe she missed someone, she said desperately. During the purge, maybe a child escaped or a cousin survived. She didn't miss anyone. His voice was hollow. She's too thorough, too paranoid. Every branch of our family tree was cut down. Then we find another way. Nerissa grabbed his hand, squeezing with all her strength. I won't let you die. I can't. Nerissa. You said your wolf chose me, she interrupted fiercely. You said it recognized me. Maybe that means something. Maybe there's a reason I survived the arena, a reason you bowed instead of killed. Corvain stared at her, and something flickered in his eyes. Not hope. He seemed incapable of that. But consideration. There was something, he admitted slowly. When I first scented you in the arena, something familiar, like a melody I'd heard in a dream. What kind of familiar? He shook his head. I don't know. It was buried too deep to understand. But my wolf was certain. You weren't a stranger. Somehow, impossibly, you felt like pack. Pack. The word resonated in Nerissa's chest, in that hollow space that had stirred to life the first time she'd touched him. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. Corvain waited. I told you I was an orphan, a ward of the Vance family. She swallowed hard. But I don't actually know where I came from. Lady Orinth said a dying noblewoman begged her to take me in, some distant connection. She never told me more, and I learned not to ask. What are you saying? I don't know what I'm saying. Nerissa's voice trembled. I just know that I've never felt like I belonged anywhere. I've never had a wolf, but I've always felt like something was missing, locked away. And when I'm near you, that feeling gets stronger. His gaze widened. His hand tightened on hers. Show me your back. What? Your lower back, near the left hip. Now. Something in his tone made her obey without question. Nerissa turned, pulling up her shift just enough to expose the skin he'd indicated. She heard his sharp intake of breath. There's a mark, he whispered. A birthmark, shaped like a crescent moon. I know. Nerissa had always been ashamed of it. Just another thing that made her different, wrong, other. What does it? Every true-blooded Valdris is born with that mark. Corvain's voice shook. It's the sign of our lineage, the blessing of the Silver Moon herself. Nerissa turned to face him, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. That's impossible. I'm wolfless. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. Tears were streaming down Corvain's face. Nerissa, don't you understand? You carry the blood of my house. Not close kin. The cadet branches split generations ago. But Valdris blood runs in your veins. Royal blood. That's why my wolf recognized you. Not as family. His eyes burned into hers. As mate. The world tilted beneath her feet. But how? If Severa killed everyone, she must have missed one. A pregnancy she didn't know about. A child spirited away before the purge. His grip on her hand was almost painful now. The noblewoman who gave you to the Vances, she must have been protecting you, hiding you in plain sight. Nerissa's mind reeled. Everything she'd believed about herself, worthless, broken, and cursed, was unraveling. She wasn't wolfless because she was defective. She was wolfless because someone had hidden what she truly was. If this is true, she said slowly, then my blood could break the curse. Corvain's voice cracked with desperate hope. If you're truly Valdris, if that mark means what I think it means, you could save me. Save us both. Nerissa stared at him, at this man who had been beast, who had been monster, who had been the only person to ever make her feel seen. Tell me what I need to do. The full moon was in 3 nights. 3 nights to confirm her heritage, find a way to access her blood safely, and perform whatever ritual might shatter a decade-old curse. 3 nights while Corvain grew weaker by the hour. The dark veins had spread from his chest to his neck, creeping toward his face. He could barely hold human form for more than an hour now, and even in beast form, his breathing was labored, his movements sluggish. The curse was winning. Nerissa needed information, and there was only one place to find it. The Royal Archives, Corvain had gasped during one of his lucid moments. Severa keeps records of everything, including the magic she used. She's obsessive about documenting her victories. How do I get in? You don't. His golden eyes burned with frustration. The archives are sealed to anyone without royal blood. Royal blood. If Nerissa was truly Valdris, she might qualify. But she had no proof. No way to test the theory without exposing herself to the Queen's scrutiny. Unless she found someone who already knew the truth. The dungeon beneath the palace was darker than the beast's cell. Nerissa had bribed a guard with the few coins she'd stolen from inattentive servants, claiming she wanted to see the other prisoners, to bring them water, perform acts of charity. The guard had laughed at her naivety but taken the money. She wasn't looking for random prisoners. She was looking for anyone who remembered the old ways. In the deepest cell, chained to the wall like an afterthought, she found an ancient woman. Her hair was white as bone, her body withered to almost nothing, but her eyes, when they opened, held a sharp intelligence that age hadn't dimmed. Another one come to gawk? The old woman rasped. Or are you here to kill me? The Queen sends assassins sometimes, just to watch me flinch. I'm here for information. Nerissa crouched before the cell, keeping her voice low. About the silver moon, about the Valdris bloodline. Those sharp eyes fixed on her with sudden burning intensity. Dangerous words, girl. Words that get people thrown in places like this. The old woman leaned forward. Why do you want to know? Because I think I might be one of them. Silence. Then the old woman began to laugh, a dry, cracking sound like dead leaves in wind. Show me, she commanded. Show me the mark. Nerissa hesitated only a moment before turning, lifting her shift to reveal the crescent birthmark. The laughter stopped immediately. The merciful moon, the old woman breathed. You're Miravel's child. Who? Lady Miravel of the Valdris Cadet Branch. A distant cousin to the princes, but pure-blooded nonetheless. She vanished the night before the purge. Everyone assumed Severa had killed her secretly. The old woman pressed against the bars. But she was pregnant. No one knew except me. I was her handmaiden, her confidant. I helped her escape. Nerissa's knees nearly buckled. You knew my mother? I know everything. The old woman's eyes gleamed. I know the curse Severa used, the blood magic that powers it, and the ritual that could break it. I've spent 10 years in this cell, memorizing every detail, waiting for someone worthy to pass it on to. Tell me, please. The curse requires Valdris blood to maintain and Valdris blood to break. Sevra used Prince Aldrich's blood, Corvain's eldest brother, taken as he died. To shatter it, you need blood from a living heir, given freely beneath the full moon, poured over the cursed one's heart. That's all? Just blood? Not just blood. The old woman's expression darkened. The ritual requires you to unlock your own wolf first. Your power was sealed when you were an infant. I did it myself, to hide you from Severa's hunters. Without unsealing it, your blood is just blood. With it, she smiled grimly. With it, you carry the full power of the silver moon. How do I unseal it? You need the binding stone, a moonstone carved with your mother's own hands, used to lock your wolf away. The old woman paused. Miravel gave it to the noblewoman who took you. Lady Orinth, I believe. Nerissa's blood ran cold. Lady Orinth. Her tormentor. Her captor. The woman who had treated her like vermin for 23 years had been holding the key to her identity the entire time. If Orinth has the stone, Nerissa said slowly, I'll never get it. She'd die before helping me. Then make her die. The old woman's voice was flat, pitiless. Or find another way. But know this, child, without that stone, you cannot save the prince. And if he dies, the last hope of the silver moon dies with him. Getting out of the palace was easier than expected. Sevra had grown complacent, her beast caged, her prisoner helpless, her power absolute. The guards barely glanced at the servant girl slipping out at dawn. Nerissa ran. The Vance estate was half a day's journey on foot, but she made it in 7 hours, pushing herself until her legs screamed and her lungs burned. She had no plan beyond confrontation, no strategy beyond desperation. Lady Orinth was in the garden when Nerissa arrived, taking tea with Sabine as if the world hadn't just turned inside out. You. Sabine spotted her first, face contorting with disbelief. You're supposed to be dead. Sorry to disappoint. Nerissa strode forward, ignoring the screaming servants, the shouting guards. Her eyes were fixed on Lady Orinth, who had gone very, very pale. You know what I am, Nerissa said. You've always known. Guards! Sabine shrieked. Seize her! Wait! Lady Orinth raised one trembling hand. Her eyes, cold, calculating eyes that had never shown Nerissa anything but contempt, now held something else. Fear. Leave us, Orinth commanded. All of you. Mother. I said leave. Sabine fled with the servants. Nerissa and Lady Orinth faced each other across the garden, decades of cruelty hanging between them. The binding stone, Nerissa said. Give it to me. So you finally know. Orinth's voice was bitter. I wondered when you'd figure it out. When someone would tell you what you really are. A princess. A Valdris heir. A danger. Orinth's composure cracked, revealing something raw beneath. Your mother begged me to take you. Swore it would only be for a few months, until she found somewhere safer. But she never came back. The older woman's hands shook as she lifted her teacup. The purge happened instead. And I was left with a child who could have gotten my entire family executed if anyone discovered what she was. So you treated me like garbage to throw off suspicion. I kept you alive. Orinth slammed the cup down. Every day for 23 years, I protected you from a queen who would have killed you on sight. And this is my thanks? Demands and accusations? You let your daughter beat me. You let her frame me for theft. You sent me to die in an arena. The arena was Sabine's doing. For the first time, shame flickered across Orinth's face. She found the necklace herself, hid it to incriminate you. By the time I discovered the truth, you were already condemned. What was I supposed to do? Reveal everything? Get us all killed? You could have told me. Nerissa's voice broke. You could have given me the truth. Silence. Then Orinth reached into her bodice and withdrew a chain. From it hung a small, luminescent stone, pale as moonlight, carved with symbols Nerissa couldn't read. Your mother's moonstone, Orinth said quietly. The key to your wolf. Take it and go." Nerissa stepped forward and took the stone. It was warm in her palm, pulsing with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. "One more thing," she said. "Sever's curse on the Valdris line. How do I break it?" Orinth stared at her. "You'd challenge the queen? Alone?" "I'm not alone. I have the last prince of the Silver Moon." Nerissa met her gaze without flinching. "And in 2 nights, under the full moon, I'm going to set him free." For a long moment, Orinth said nothing. Then, slowly, she nodded. "There's a passage," she said. "An old servant's tunnel that leads from the palace kitchens to the beast's cell. It was built for emergencies during the Silver Moon's reign. Severa doesn't know it exists." "How do you know about it?" A sad smile crossed Orinth's face. "Because your mother showed it to me, the night she handed you to me." She said, "If my daughter ever needs to reach the heart of the palace unseen, this is the way." Nerissa clutched the moonstone tighter, feeling history collapse around her. The mother she'd never known, the legacy she'd never understood, the destiny she'd never imagined. "Thank you," she said. She turned to leave. "Nerissa." Orinth's voice stopped her at the garden gate. "I'm sorry. For everything. It doesn't excuse what I did, but I'm sorry." Nerissa didn't look back. She had a prince to save and a queen to destroy. The full moon rose over Valdrin like a promise. Nerissa moved through the servant's tunnel, the moonstone warm against her chest. The passage was narrow, choked with dust and cobwebs, clearly untouched for decades. But her mother had walked this path once, and somehow that knowledge gave her courage. She emerged in a storage alcove adjacent to Corvain's cell. Through the barred window she could see him, collapsed in beast form, the dark veins now covering half his body, his breathing shallow and rattling. "Corvain." She pressed against the bars. "I'm here. I found it." The Lycan's eyes opened slowly, clouded with pain but still recognizing her. A weak sound escaped his throat. "I'm going to save you," she whispered. "Just hold on." The moonstone pulsed in her hand as she lifted it toward the window. Moonlight streamed through, catching the carved surface, and suddenly the symbols blazed with silver fire. Power flooded through her. It was like drowning and breathing for the first time simultaneously. Something inside her, something that had been caged her entire life, shattered free with a force that drove her to her knees. She heard herself scream, felt her bones shift, her skin stretch, her senses explode into impossible sharpness. When it ended, Nerissa was no longer just Nerissa. She was wolf and woman both, her form somewhere between, not monstrous like Corvain's cursed shape, but powerful, beautiful, right. Her wolf howled inside her, finally awake, finally home. And it knew exactly what to do. Nerissa gripped the bars of Corvain's cell, bars that had seemed immovable before, and pulled. Metal shrieked, stone cracked. The barrier that had separated them crumbled beneath strength she hadn't known she possessed. She was beside him in an instant, her clawed hands gentle as they cradled his massive head. "I'm here," she breathed. "I'm here, and I'm not leaving." His golden eyes found hers, filled with wonder despite the agony consuming him. Nerissa raised her wrist to her mouth and bit down. Blood welled immediately, silver-tinged, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Valdris blood. Royal blood. She pressed the wound to his chest, directly over his heart, where the darkness was thickest. "I give this freely," she said, her voice resonating with power she didn't fully understand. "Blood of the Silver Moon, blood of the Valdris line. I give it to break what was broken, to heal what was wounded, to free what was caged." The effect was immediate and violent. Corvain's body arched off the ground, a howl tearing from his throat that shook the walls. Silver light erupted from where her blood touched his fur, racing along the dark veins, consuming the corruption like fire consuming shadow. The curse fought back. She could feel it, ancient and vicious, clinging to its host with desperate fury. But her blood was stronger. Her love was stronger. The darkness shattered. Light exploded outward, blinding and pure, and when it faded, the beast was gone. In its place lay a man, Corvain, fully human. The veins vanished, color returning to his skin, breath flowing steady and strong. His eyes opened, clear gold unclouded by curse or pain. Nerissa. He reached for her, and she fell into his arms, both of them shaking, both of them whole. It worked, she sobbed. You're alive. Because of you. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Really look, taking in her shifted form, her silver-touched eyes, the power radiating from her being. You're magnificent. Before she could respond, the cell door exploded inward. Queen Severa stood in the entrance, flanked by guards, her face twisted with fury. What have you done? She screamed. What have you— Corvain rose to his feet, placing himself between Severa and Nerissa. But he needn't have bothered, because Nerissa stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of generations. I am Nerissa Valdris, daughter of Lady Mirabelle, heir to the Silver Moon, and your reign is over. Severa's face went white. Kill her! She shrieked at her guards. Kill them both! No one moved. Because behind Severa, filling the corridor, stood the people of the palace. Servants and guards, cooks and stable hands, all the common folk who remembered the Silver Moon, who had suffered under Severa's cruelty, who had whispered prayers for deliverance every night for 10 years. They had heard the howl, they had seen the light, and they knew what it meant. The curse is broken, an old servant called out. The true rulers have returned. The cry spread like wildfire. Servants seized guards. Guards turned on their commanders. Within minutes, Severa stood alone, stripped of her weapons, stripped of her power, stripped of everything but her fury. This isn't over, she hissed at Nerissa. You'll face justice, Corvain interrupted. The same justice you denied my family, the same mercy you never showed your victims. He nodded to the approaching crowd. Take her to the dungeons. She'll answer for her crimes before the people she wronged. As Severa was dragged away screaming, Nerissa felt Corvain's hand find hers. She leaned into him, exhausted but complete. 6 months later, the coronation was held under the full moon, because that felt right. Nerissa stood beside Corvain on the palace balcony, looking out at the thousands who had gathered to witness the restoration of the Silver Moon. The kingdom had changed. Lycans honored again, blood magic banned, Severa's victims freed and compensated. Lady Orinth had testified at the trial. Sabine had fled the kingdom, and no one pursued her. Some fates were punishment enough. Are you ready? Corvain murmured, squeezing her hand. For what? Being queen? Nerissa laughed softly. Absolutely not. But I'll learn. We'll learn together. He pressed a kiss to her temple. We were both hiding when we met, both caged by other people's cruelty. But we found each other anyway. And freed each other? Nerissa added. And freed each other. Below them, the crowd began to chant their names. Corvain and Nerissa, king and queen, the impossible pair who had survived an arena, a curse, and a tyrant's wrath. Nerissa thought of the girl she'd been 6 months ago, standing in chains on blood-stained sand, waiting for death. That girl was gone. In her place stood a queen, a Lycan, a woman who had walked through fire and darkness to find where she truly belonged. I love you, she said. Corvain smiled, that same smile that had transformed him the first time he'd said those words to her. I love you too, he replied. Always. They stepped forward together to greet their people, their kingdom, their future. And somewhere deep inside Nerissa, her wolf howled in pure, unrestrained joy.